controlled by the player. For that we're gonna need a new script. Let's just duplicate the one we already have. Let's rename that to add player controlled velocity. Then I'm gonna copy that name and double click that, so now it's open here, and then remember to replace this with add player controlled velocity so it has the same name as the file. And now I just want to add 2 more serialized variables, 2 more of these serialized fields. This time the variable type is key code, so a button. Let's call this one key positive. Let's duplicate that and call this one negative. Now if you save that script, let's remove that component and add this component, add player controlled velocity. We should have a force vector right here, and then we should be able to choose a positive key and a negative key. And now the way I imagine this will work is I can say I want this object to move on the x-axis, so I'm gonna put a 1 here. Then we could, for example, choose let's choose right arrow for positive, and then go with left arrow. Obviously this doesn't do anything yet. What I want to do now is just add a new if statement. If statement looks like this. You write if, then you open a bracket and you close a bracket, input dot get key, then we open another bracket and close another bracket, and in those brackets we write our variable key positive. Then go 1 line down here, press tab. Here we go. So now this force is only added if we press the positive button. Let's do the same with the negative button. Only difference, when we press the negative button, we don't want to add the force, we want to subtract the force. This way we can move in both directions. Very simple script. Should work out just fine. Let's give it a go. Alright, it's a little fast, but I can now control the ball to the left and to the right. Let's make it a little slower, 0.2. Yeah, that feels nice. Obviously you can also use a different axis, the z-axis for example. Now we move diagonally. If we move the x component of this vector, we're just gonna move vertically. So basically, if I want this ball to be controllable in all directions, what do we need to do? We're just gonna keep it like this, and actually can add multiple of these components onto one object. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. Just add this one more time and do the same thing for the C component. And then select the according buttons on the keyboard, up arrow positive, down arrow for negative. So now we have the X movement and the C movement. Now I can move my ball in all directions. Hell yeah. So I'd say it's time to build the first small level, because why the hell not? This tutorial is all about experimenting and having fun, so feel free to mess around with this stuff as well. Okay, now let's adjust the camera so it can see everything that's going on. Let's see if getting up here is possible. Okay. Yeah, but you... Next up, I want there to be a way to restart the level, because at the moment, if I mess up, the only way I can restart is by pausing the game and pressing play again. That's a little annoying, so let's make a restart button real quick. For that, let's just make a new script and let's call it restart level with button. All we need is a serialized field with a key code. Let's call it key restart. We don't need the start event. Cleaning this up a little bit. By the way, whenever you make 2 slashes like this, you can write a comment. This will not affect the code at all after 2 slashes. So you can delete that sort of stuff, no problem at all. Now how do we check if the button is pressed? We just, once again, ask if input dot get key restart. Now if all of this is true, if the button is pressed, then we want to restart the scene. For this we actually need to add something up here using Unity engine dot scene management and then a semicolon. So this is just a package of scripts we can use, and the scripts we want to use happen to be in this package and not in those 3 packages, so we just need to add another one. Now we can write scene manager dot load scene, open bracket, close bracket, and then we want to load the scene we're in right now. The scene we want to load goes in here. So usually your text editor should show you what you need to write into those brackets. Sometimes you can write different things in there. You can switch between different versions by clicking on these arrows right here. We're gonna go for the string. So which scene do we want to load? Scene manager dot get active scene returns the scene we're in right now. problem is this function doesn't take scenes as an input. Putting a scene in here is not an option, so we need to add .name. This way we have an acceptable input for this function. Basically everything that has these brackets after it is a function, by the way. Okay, that's the script. Let's save it. And we couldn't put that either on the sphere. I'm just gonna put it onto the camera because we only have one of these. You know what? If you wanna keep it super clean, just make a new object, a new empty object, and call it something like Game Manager, and then let's add our restart level with button script onto that. I wanna be able to restart the level with the button R. Here we go. Save scene. So now whenever we hit R, the level is restarted. Next up, I want the camera to follow our little sphere here so we can build bigger levels. One of the easiest ways to do that is just to align that to the ball somewhat properly, and then take the camera in the hierarchy and drag it into the sphere. Also, let's rename the sphere to player. Now the camera will follow the sphere. There's only one problem, and you'll see that. It basically also follows the rotation. Oh my god, this is horrible to look at. So there is a somewhat easy fix to this. If you click on the player on your sphere, take the rigid body component, you can see this one has some settings here as well. If you open this down here, constraints, we can just freeze the rotation. So this object is no longer allowed to rotate. This way our ball doesn't rotate and our camera doesn't rotate either. The problem being the ball doesn't rotate anymore. So if we want the ball to rotate, we need to find a different solution. And for that, we can just write a simple script. Let's call the script copy position, and we can write that right into the update event right here. We don't need the fixed update even for that. Fixed update is only useful for physics-based stuff. For this one, it's totally fine if it's just called whenever the frame is rendered. All we want to do is copy the position of an object. So we're going to write serialize field, and then the variable type we want to have this time is a transform. I'm going to call this trans target. Let's add that script right here. Now I can drag the player object in here, and we will automatically get the transform component of this object. So you see, this player object has a transform. The transform is the one that stores the position, the rotation, and the scale. And on our camera, we now have the reference to that transform. Meaning we can now say transform.position equals trans target.position. Transform obviously is the transform of this object. Trans target is the transform of our target object. So we will just copy the position of the target object. Very simple script, we're already done. Now there's a little bit of a problem with that. I'm gonna show you. If we hit play now, the camera is obviously inside the ball because we're exactly at the position of the ball. In order to fix that, we're gonna create an empty object, put that at the same position as the player. Here we go. Let's call this camera rig. And then let's drag the camera inside our camera rig. The camera rig really just at the moment is an empty object. Then we can remove the copy position script from the camera and put it on our camera rig instead. Then once again, we obviously need to get the reference to the player transform in there. And now this object right here, the camera rig, will always be placed where the player is, and that means the camera will always be at a position that makes sense, because see, if I move this camera rig right here, the camera moves along with it. If this camera rig follows the ball, then so does the camera. Now we can obviously unlock the rotation of the rigid body. We can allow this ball to rotate again, and now we are able to build a much larger level if we want. So let's do exactly that. Here we go. Let's hit play. Okay, haha, I did it! Next up, let's make the game restart automatically when the player falls down. There's really no point in not doing that. Let's just make a big surface down here. Here we go. So let's duplicate our restart level on button script, and let's call it restart level on collision. Now remember, we need to change the name here as well. We don't need that key. What we need is a different event, because this is not supposed to happen every single frame. This is only supposed to happen whenever this object touches another object. So we need void on collision enter. And then we just put our scene restart script in there and delete all of the rest. Here we go. Let's save that. Now if we put that very script onto our lava ground right here, restart level on collision. Now whenever we touch that ground, the level should restart. In fact, it works. Haha, that's fantastic. There's one problem though. If I add another cube here, and let's give that cube a rigid body. If this cube touches the ground, I lose as well. So this is not exactly what we want. So how can we differentiate between those two objects? There's a very simple system for that in Unity that helps us out with that. Let's give this a new tag. Oh, there already is a player tag, so we could use that one, but we could also create a new tag by clicking on add tag, and then creating a new tag right here. So we're just gonna go with the custom player tag. Here we go. And then to our restart on collision script, add a new variable, serialize field, string. So string is basically text, call it string tag. And then we only reload the scene if collision.collider.tag equals the tag we want to check. Only then we restart the scene. Here in this very first line of these events, these functions, you can see which inputs this function has. So this entire thing is a function as well, and it has this input, collision, and we can use that input in here. So collision in this case is just some information about the object that touched us, about how we collided exactly, and it also happens to contain the tag of the object that we hit. So we can check that right here if it's the correct tag. We're gonna restart the scene. Now let's say this one checks for the tag player. This one doesn't have the tag player. This object right here does have the tag player. So now pushing that box down there shouldn't do anything, but falling down there myself will restart the level. Great!
Time to build something awesome.
Alright, I took some more time to finish this level up. Just continued building some level design elements back here. Also, I added these stripes to the ball, which are parented spheres. See, basically just a flat sphere that is a child of this sphere. And I also removed the collider of it. I really just want those stripes to be optical, nothing that interferes with the gameplay. And also another big thing I did is I added some post-processing to the camera. You can see that here. This is how it looks without post-processing. This is how it looks with post-processing. Just looks a little bit nicer, but that's something we'll have to save for the next tutorial. For now, let's export this. For that, click on File, Build Settings, then make sure your scene is in here. Scenes that you want to be included in the build, just drag them in here. You can also disable them like this. At the moment there's no way to go to the second scene anyway, so everything's fine. And then let's just click on build and run, and that should build and run our game. We also need to specify a build location. For that I'm just gonna go with the desktop for now. Then we'll have to wait for a second. Here we go. If the build is complete and you launch the game, you will see this window. Just click on play and we can play our game. Here's one issue you might run into if you make multiple scenes. When the level restarts, it suddenly looks way darker. The way to fix that is just to go to Windows, Rendering, Lighting Settings, then uncheck this Auto-Generate button and just click on Generate Lighting. That will take a second. When that is done, this issue shouldn't occur anymore when restarting the scene. Here we go. Problem solved. So here we have another game I made using the exact same scripts. It's a 1v1 game. You can play against your friends. One player controls with the arrow keys, one player controls with WASD. Whoever pushes the other one off the platform wins and the game just restarts. So I challenge you to make this game as well. You don't need to write any new scripts for this. It's a good exercise. Try to make this game. Here's something completely different, but still using the same script, so you don't need to write any new scripts for this. The goal is basically to get this block out of there, and you can move the purple blocks left and right, and you can move the orange blocks up and down. So yeah, you've just gotta be creative. There's already a lot you can do with this, and I challenge you to build this game as well. A little trick you need to know is you can change the camera perspective between orthographic and perspective on the camera. For this really cool casual look, you just need to turn it to orthographic. Remember that you can freeze the position and the rotation of a rigid body on certain axes in the settings of the rigid body. That is definitely useful for that. Other than that, you should absolutely be able to create this without creating any new scripts. In the next tutorial, we'll expand on all of that even further, writing more cool scripts you can play around with, bringing enemies into the game, making games that have multiple levels. But for now, I'm really happy I managed to get you to a place where you can start experimenting yourself. There are already so many creative things you can do with the scripts we have so far. What if the player could control multiple objects at once, for example? You could make a co-op puzzle game where player A is only allowed to touch blue blocks and player B is only allowed